you bought 6,000 paintings.
That's pretty crazy for somebody to just go ahead and buy 6,000 paintings out of a storage locker. When you're 18 and you get hit with the cancer thing, it kind of puts a little bit of a shock to your system. It really made me think about how fragile life is. The only failing in any sort of creative pursuit is the quitting. It's easier to sell one idea to a million people than a million ideas to one person. When you think about it, it's like 70% business and only 30% painting. Because if you're not failing a lot, then you're not working enough.
From externally, like look at you, like it seems like you're doing pretty well. I found you through social media. So what do you feel that's not working that's taking steps back?
Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Today's guest is Josh Harnack, a surrealist artist whose journey is a profound exploration of art, business, and resilience. From breathing new life into forgotten canvases and building a powerful personal brand to navigating life's deepest challenges. Josh's story is a masterclass in creativity and the unbreakable spirit of making art. Let's jump right in.
Hello, my name is Josh Harnack, and I am a surrealist artist based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. A lot of my work revolves taking old paintings from the 80s and 90s and revamping them in a surrealist way.
So I guess let's just start from kind of the thing that caught my attention. I think a lot of people's attention. And that was on your Instagram. You had this super kind of viral reel about you bought this like warehouse of 6,000 paintings, something to that extent. Can you first of all, like, how'd that kind of come about?
Well, okay, because there's a long story there, but because that's pretty crazy for somebody to just go ahead and buy 6,000 paintings out of a storage locker. And I am a little crazy, but I'm not that crazy. There was like a bit of a lead up to that moment, and it kind of like, to go through the whole story, it started in 2016, and I had a friend. He moved out of his parents' house and got an apartment, and his grandparents gave him an old painting of these. It's just like two geese, and it's like a watercolor painting of two geese, and it was really boring. But it had a nice frame on it and everything. And he messaged me and he just said, "Hey man, how much would you charge for you just to take this old painting and make it weird?" And I said, "Oh yeah, like $300 or something like that." And so he gave me this piece, and I kind of went a little overboard on it. I had a lot of fun doing it, but I went totally overboard. Like I painted a portal to hell. Like it was like it's almost too weird, for my taste. But I had a lot of fun revamping this old painting because I got to kind of play within the physics of another artist's scene, and then just kind of roll with it. And from then on, I thought, well, this is cool. Let me go to like some thrift stores and find some old paintings and update those. And that's kind of what I did. I did maybe like 5 or 6 of them and had a great time doing it. I did one really small show with them at the Creative Hive here in Edmonton, and then there wasn't really a whole lot to it other than just me, you know, dabbling in this type of art. And then I'm just hanging out with a friend, another artist, and I get a call from a charity, and the charity was like, "Hey, we contacted so and so, and kind of through the grapevine of connections, we found you because apparently you take old art and revamp it." And that's of interest because we just got donated this lady's life's work. She had passed away, and her daughter donated her unsold paintings to our charity. Hopefully, we could do something with it. And we just were wondering if you would like to buy it all. And I said, "Okay, well, how many paintings are there?" They said, maybe 100. And I said, "Oh, that's a lot of paintings to just go for." And I said, "Can I come over and flip through the best ones?" And they said, "Nope, it's loaded up in my husband's truck. We're a little mom and pop charity. We operate out of our house, and we have no room for them either. So they're either going to your house or they're going to the dump." And I thought, "Oh man, I can't really see this lady's work go to the dump." So I said, "Yeah, sure, drop them off." So half an hour later, she was at the door dropping off 100 paintings for me. And, out of the 100, maybe like 50 of them were like finished paintings. The other ones were like unfinished works or like actually like ripped canvases and stuff like that. And so some of those ones I ended up throwing out. Some of them I donated to Value Village. And then the rest I kept for myself. and her name was Anna Zoldi. She was like a St. Albert artist her whole life. And she had done a few shows herself, but she wasn't a very big artist, more of a hobby artist, I would say. But the paintings were really good, and I had stuff from like 1976 all the way to like 2012. So when I'm taking her work and adding to it, which is what I ultimately decided to do, uh, I really gotta be part of her journey through her life as an artist and kind of see, when she was relatively new and kind of shitty, all the way to her later work when she was like really good. And that was like such a cool journey to be a part of because I never got to meet her and don't really know too much about her, but just being part of her artistic journey was honestly the most rewarding part of the whole experience. But then I started taking those paintings to shows, and they got such good public reception that they all started selling. And eventually I sold out of all of them and I was back to thrift stores. But at this point, like the thrift store art is, most of them are actually pretty horrible pieces, or paper, which I prefer to work with original art instead of just
Yeah.
painting on paper because it'll last longer.
Yeah.
And then just I was doing an art residency down in the Crow's Nest Pass, and I was just on Facebook Marketplace one day, and I saw storage lockers, 6,000 paintings, and there was like no pictures, no description or anything. And I thought, okay, well, this is at least cool enough for me to go check out. Maybe they'll let me buy a handful from the storage locker. And so I met up with the guy, and this thing is like floor to ceiling, just it was kind of inaccessible. Like I wasn't really able to like browse through a ton of the artwork. It was just like there was a couple stacks I could look through, and then the rest of it was like buried. Uh, and I started looking through some of them, and some of them were totally ruined. When you're dealing with that many paintings, they're not all going to be perfect pieces. And then some of them were really good, and I thought, I like, if they don't go to me, who are they going to go to? And they're probably going to end up in the dump. So I decided, yeah, let's the Anna Zoldi artwork was like a proof of concept, and now I'm doubling down on it and hoping it works out for the best. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I kind of came into 6,000 paintings.
So the Anna Zoldi, was that like your first time doing this kind of like, what's a good word? Repurposing, I guess, like other people's
Yeah,
artwork?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I call them unofficial collaborations, but yes,
Uh-huh.
they're definitely upcycled, repurposed artwork. And yeah, it was the first time. I mean, outside of my friend bringing me a piece and doing like a handful from thrift stores, this was like me kind of diving deeper into it and taking my career in that direction. Just because it brought me a ton of joy, and I just thought it was so satisfying when to take this old painting and then to that's a lot of the paintings that I do, they're really good paintings. Like they got great bones to them, great lighting, and they're technically well done. They're just so dated and they're really boring. And but there is so much potential in them. So by injecting them with like a little bit of surrealism, I kind of bring them into this modern age and like kind of a hybrid of styles between classical alla prima art and like modern surrealism. So I think that kind of that dance between the two is a lot of fun. And then for me as an artist, being able to mix the color and match the colors and like the lighting and play within the scene that the other artist had dictated is so much fun for me to figure
Mm,
out how it's all going to work together and
yeah.
try to balance it to make it look so seamless, like
Yeah.
only one artist did it.
Yeah. It's funny, just like on that note specifically, that's one thing that I personally really don't enjoy. Like, my background's kind of in like film industry, like concept design and stuff of that nature. And so the one area I've always kind of shied away from is like VFX, because I specifically hate like kind of matching the lighting and doing all that kind of stuff. Like that stuff to me is like the worst part of it. So it's it's a definitely different perspective.
Yeah,
Um
it's hard to do. I'm not gonna
yeah.
lie. Every once in a while, I kind of get sick of it, and I'm like, I want to paint something from scratch again.
Yeah.
Which sometimes I do like commissions or like some personal work, and that kind of scratches that itch. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I understand both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. I'm curious to ask you, like, when you are, you know, doing these unofficial collaborations, what's the what's the sort of feeling? Like, does it feel like I'm breathing new life into this person's work? Is there any part of you that thinks, oh man, like what am I doing to this person's work? You know, they kind of had this vision, and I'm kind of like almost like sacrilegious. You know, like I'm kind of, you know,
Well, you
is
know,
that part of it at all?
oh, yeah, for sure. Of course it is. You know, there's two things with the Anna Zoldi work. The first show I ever did, because I didn't know her daughter at all. It was like through the charity, so I didn't even know
Yeah,
had contact information with the daughter. But the first show I actually did with them was in St. Albert, and her daughter coincidentally showed up to the show. And from a mile away, she comes storming over to my booth, and I thought, uh-oh. And she goes, "That's my mom's artwork on your wall." And I thought she was going to rip me apart. My heart sank, but she was like, "I love what you're doing. It's so cool."
wow,
And and so anyways, we ended up kind of just chit-chatting a little bit, but she was like, "My mom would have been so excited that her work didn't end up in the dump and actually got to have a second life on
yeah,
somebody's wall." And then also she's from the grave, she's kind of helping you with your art career. So she was like, my mom would have been so happy that she could kind of help you along with your career. And
yeah,
that made me feel really good because that's definitely one way of taking it.
right,
But some people have obviously taken it the opposite way, where it is
right,
sacrilegious and you shouldn't be ruining other people's artwork and that caveat. But the artwork's going to end up in the dump. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's had its time. It never sold, and if it did, it's not on anyone's wall anymore. And
right,
the
right,
original artist made all the money off of it anyway. Like, it's done.
yeah,
In our world, you know, what do you want? To throw it in the dump or to have it live a second life? And
yeah,
we live in a world of overconsumption anyway, so it's like, come on, like let's start
yeah,
repurposing some stuff. And this artwork, the 6,000 paintings that I bought, they're all done in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in like a factory in China, mass produced with like
uh-huh,
100 artists in a giant warehouse, all painting the same painting, you know, 5 times a day, and then
yeah,
shipping it
yeah,
over here to undermine the North American art market. So I'm reclaiming, you know,
yeah.
this undermining of the art market.
You're playing your
Uh,
part.
exactly.
Yeah.
So however, however, people getting upset online that I'm doing it is great for the algorithm.
Yeah, listen, you know, engagement's engagement, right? You know, what they say, no press is bad press.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I kind of like that how it kind of sparks that conversation a little bit more because
yeah,
art people have been painting over other people's art for like thousands of years. Like this isn't a
right,
new concept by any means.
right,
It's
right.
just whatever the modern version of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a cool perspective you have. Like, and I was kind of asking just like to get a sense of like your mindset because you know like I'm sure like you can kind of argue either side, you know, strongly, but and I personally like think that it's very cool what you're doing, and like you said, it kind of gives these paintings like a second life to like you know kind of really gives them a chance to like to shine and to get seen by an audience, and the fact that you are embellishing them in a way that's so different from the original piece, I think really adds to that. You know, because it's not like oh, I'm just kind of like adding like a person into the scene. It's like no, like I'm like making this a whole new kind of feel to whatever the scene is, and it's really fun and kind of different. You know, which is you know that's kind of I think good art is always kind of different. You know, that's what differentiates. You know.
Totally. Well,
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun with it. Like, and that's kind of that's the main driver is like, you know, have fun and like enjoy
Yeah.
it. And then yeah, the like old landscapes. I mean, everybody loves a good landscape. I love a good landscape. They're so they appeal to so many people because people have been to these places, and you know. But a lot of these scenes, they're just generic. They're so generic.
Yeah.
They don't say
Yeah.
anything. They're not nostalgia sakes. They don't remind you of, you know, like a place you've been like in Banff, like the Three Sisters or something like that. They're just
Yeah.
generic landscapes. So they don't really mean anything. And so for me to actually add some meaning and relevance to them, I think is like a great way of yeah, revamping
Yeah.
them because now they actually have purpose and a little bit of soul in them.
Yeah, for definitely. So you've been, from what I understand, you've been doing art basically your whole life. You've always been artistic, always been kind of doodling from a young age. So can you kind of walk through from that, you know, 5-year-old doodling in class to to where you are now, like the whole kind of process?
Well, okay. Well, I'll start off by saying I have no innate and artistic and talent. It is like it's just like a lot of hard work, and it really just started out with like getting like monster books and like honestly just tracing out these monsters, and then pretending I didn't trace them out to impress the classmates. And then my sister is actually a fairly good drawer, so I just copied whatever she did. She did these like little kind of aquatic creatures and whales and fish and stuff like that, and I just kind of ripped her off. And that's how I started when I was like 5, 6 years old. And I always just loved art, and just drawing and painting and stuff like that, and just like all the different mediums. And because I really love that element of control and being in control of it all. And I did it a little bit in junior high, but and a little bit in high school as well. But I was more into like drama and musical theater and stuff at the time. That was kind of the first passion, the first love. And I did art 31 in high school. So there's like art 10, 20, and 30. And then once you finish art 30, you can take like an art 31 class, which is like just special projects. And for the
Uh-huh.
whole semester, you just have to do 5 projects. And then the teacher, they're self-led. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay, great. I don't have to follow a curriculum anymore. I can kind of do whatever I want to do. And I had a lot of fun in there. It was just me and one other student in the class. We had a whole class to ourselves, and the teacher went and taught another class while we were in a separate class just doing whatever we wanted. And I really loved that freedom. And then after that, I kind of started taking art side outside of the classroom because school's done. So I had to kind of just do it at home on the kitchen table. And that's kind of where it went. There's an art walk in Edmonton called the White Avenue Art Walk. It's like one of the larger festivals. There's like 400 or 500 artists that line the streets of White Avenue with their tents and booth displays, and they're slinging art. And so my high school art teacher encouraged me to take some of these projects I had done in high school out onto the street for the White Avenue Art Walk. And so that's what I did. It was like funny because I didn't have a tablecloth, I didn't have business cards or like cards or prints or any of these other things. It was just my high school art on a couple easels leaned up against the subway walls, just gathering dust from people walking by all day. And I sold a few paintings and made, I think, $500. And I thought, this is awesome. I really love doing this. I love the art and now the engagement side of it. And hey, if I can monetize it a little bit and now take this money and buy more art supplies,
Yeah.
even better. So that's exactly what I did. I just took my art and invested, or my money, and
Yeah.
reinvested in more canvases and more paint. But then shortly after that, I went to Vancouver Film School for acting for film and television. Like I said, that was my first love, and I didn't really think about doing art as a career. Uh, but I thought, hey, I'll be an actor as a career. That sounds way better. So I went to Vancouver Film School. I went through 2 of the programs there. I graduated. I got an agent. I started auditioning. I booked a couple gigs. It was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a really pivotal moment of my life. And throughout that whole time, I was really too broke to do a whole lot else living in Vancouver other than sitting at home and painting. So that's kind of what I did. I just sat at home and painted, and I created my first series of paintings. Back then, I was doing a lot of like anthropomorphism. So the first one I did was like a lion in a suit, uh, with like a glass of wine. And then I did a whole series of animals in suits. And then my dentist bought the whole series for his office after
Oh
he
wow.
redid it, which was great. And and at the time, I was also going through some like uh, some health complications like with cancer and stuff like that. And so, being an actor and kind of doing like being an actor, you're kind of you're a character in somebody else's creation, and you're kind of just there to fill the role, and you're auditioning and getting rejected all the time. And I just really felt like my career and my life really wasn't in my hands and in my control. And with my health not really being in my control at the same time, I felt like I needed something to grab onto that
Mm.
made me feel like I was in control of something. And that's kind of where art stepped in, is because it was like full control. And and I really loved that. It was kind of a saving grace for me in that period of my life. And then I realized like I should pursue this a little further because with acting, I need to book the gig, I needed to produce it, or like I either need to produce and write and star and find the people to help me do it all, and it's like a big team effort, and I found that was like such a barrier for entry for me to actually do the thing. But with art, I could just sit down by myself and do it whenever I wanted to, and I didn't need permission from anybody. So I love that aspect of it. And then I decided to move back to Edmonton, go back to school for what I would call practical art, which is graphic design. And so I graduated from two different programs at NAIT, which is the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, one for graphic design, which taught me like all the software and some of the basics of graphic and print. And then I went into digital management and IT, and then I specialized in visual communication. And then through that whole process, I learned how to brand myself and build myself a website. And just I really tried to leverage that school uh, to help me with my art career.
Yeah.
And because the whole time I was just painting in the background in my spare time. And I also got a job at a marketing agency, and we did a bunch of really cool projects. I really actually enjoyed working at an agency. I thought it was a lot of fun. Always new clients, something new, new challenges all the time. And then at some point, COVID hit, and well, I'd left my job. The company went under. They made some bad moves, and then I was working at Festival Place, which is a theater, just bartending. And then COVID hit, and I got an opportunity to jump into doing some book design. So that's what I did. And then, kind of in that transition of doing part-time book design and art, I just decided to keep putting all of my energy into art, and then it was started making it a full-time career. Uh, yeah, back I guess in 2020, 2019 is kind of when that changeover was
Wow.
happening. So, yeah, I've been full-time ever since, and
Wow.
it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah, it sounds like it. There's like so much I want to unpack here. So I'm going to try and there are like three things that stood out
Okay.
that I want to kind of touch on. So I'll try and kind of work backwards. So the last thing that you had said, um, you talked about kind of this idea about branding yourself and marketing. That's something that kind of fascinates me, especially when it comes to artists, because I think it's a skill that a lot of artists don't necessarily focus on. They get so focused on their art that they don't understand the importance of kind of building a brand. Can you kind of talk about that and first of all, your experiences with kind of building your own brand? Because you clearly have a very strong kind of personal brand that you've built around your art, and kind of the importances of it, and then B, some kind of pointers and tips and tricks about how artists can go about doing that for themselves.
For sure, yeah. Well, I'm maybe not the best example of somebody to follow because I dance to the beat of my own drum. So I make a lot of my own mistakes, and there's like a lot of faux pas in what I do, and I kind of know that I'm doing them, but I do them anyway just because I'm the boss. I could do whatever I
Yeah,
want.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you know what? There's a lot of artists I would say that are a lot better than I am for a myriad of different reasons. And I feel like a lot of them do fall short in their level of branding and marketing and getting themselves out there. And because that's half the battle. I can sit in my basement and paint all day, every day, and have thousands of paintings. But if I'm not really good at the business aspect of it, it's really hard to sell.
right,
And every artist just wishes somebody would be coming knocking on my door all the time, and that's all I can do. I don't have to worry about the business because I just paint and then somebody buys them, and I don't
yeah,
really have to do much. That's every artist's dream, but it
right.
really doesn't work like that until maybe later in your career when you've gotten really established and you're represented and you can
But at
afford
that
to
point,
hire people.
at
Yeah.
that point, you're hiring people to do the branding and marketing for you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But yeah, when you're an artist, and I know every artist listening to this knows this. You're every job. You're the artist,
yeah,
you're the marketer, brander. You got to do your own website. You got to do your taxes. You do every role. And when you think about it, like it's like 70% business and only 30% painting. Like most of the time, I wish there was more time to do the actual painting part. Uh, and sometimes I find the dance is hard to figure out. Should I be painting more? Should I be focusing on my business more? How do I create that balance? It is always a bit of a moving target. but I think it's important for artists to brand themselves. I've struggled with it a little bit because this monster stuff that I've been doing, like I've been doing it since 2016, but I've been doing a lot of other art in the meantime. Like I do a lot of murals. I've done some shoes. I do like other commissioned artwork that has nothing to do with monsters or anthropomorphism. So I'm kind of doing different styles, different mediums. I'm doing so many different things, and sometimes that has worked for my benefit, and other times it's worked against my benefit. Like to have a level of consistency in what I'm doing is really important. And so in the last, couple years of focusing more on these monsters and stuff like that and these unofficial collaborations has really helped give a little bit more of that consistency going because people know what to expect. It's like it's easier to sell one idea to a million people than a million ideas to one person.
Mm.
And so I've always been the million ideas kind of a person. And that's a little bit been my downfall, but it's also been the source of my inspiration of never being stuck doing one thing.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of a jack of all trades and a
Yeah.
master of none, kind of. But it's always in flux, Once I'm done with these monster paintings, I'll still do them for maybe a few more years, and who knows? I might abandon them at some point and go a whole other direction. At some point, I would really love to get into like cubism or more like landscape art, more impressionist art. Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like I always gravitate to surrealism, kind of no matter what. So
Yeah.
who's to say if I'll actually abandon it or not? I do
Yeah.
really love surrealism.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
I
Time will
don't know. I
tell.
kind of got lost on a tangent. What was your question?
No, we're talking about kind of the importance and the tips and tricks for building a strong brand and kind of marketing yourself as an artist.
Yeah, well, okay. So at the end of the day, everybody's art is really personal to them and it's really special to them. And I think that's really important. So however your brand comes out of that is inherently you. And so I think for a lot of people is to try not to overthink it. I mean, you're the artist. You can always change it. Nothing's ever set in stone. Like I've redone my logo like 5 times now, and I'm always making little tweaks to it and updating it and changing it to keep it fresh, to keep it up to date with where I'm at in my life. I think to sit around and wait for something to be perfect is impossible. It's just consistent refinement over a long period
Yeah.
of time, and then you die, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's never done. And I
Yeah.
think if you're waiting for something to be perfect so it can be done, is like the crux of it all. So,
Yeah.
for a long time, my branding colors were like red and white, and now they're a little bit different. Now they're a little bit more neutral. But I do love color, and sometimes I go away from color. But as an artist, it's like the thing about being an artist is when it comes to you're not, how do I say this? There's every you're the exception to every rule. Like in marketing, branding, having everything, an artist can be the exception to every rule because what
Yeah.
you're doing is always changing. You're at the forefront of it all. Like it's not like here's a product. Now I just got to sell the product and the logo is going to be the same and the colors are going to be the same until the end of time.
Right.
As an artist, you're always playing and experimenting. And like, how do you have a brand color palette when your art is changing and you're changing as a human being? And
Right.
to be so static is the antithesis of being an artist in a lot of ways, because you should always be at the forefront and changing and evolving and adapting to society and culture and those sorts of shifts. So branding yourself as an artist is hard, but it's hard when you are trying to pin it down because
Mm.
it can't be pinned down. It's an ever moving target.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. So now taking a step back to the next point that I want to hit on, and you kind of touched upon it again a little bit, and that is kind of different mediums. So obviously a lot of your work is with paint. Is that your preference is for paint, or is that just kind of what works because of the projects you're working on? Like, do you have a preferred medium?
Well, yeah, I've gotten really good with paint and brushes, and I find that is in a lot of ways it's just the easiest to do.
Mm.
For me, like I mean, pen and paper's even easier. It's so cheap, so affordable. Anyone can do it. Pen and paper is like the goat in many ways.
Yeah.
But I love working with my hands. Like I love physical mediums. I know the world is kind of going more digital, and I'm fighting against it a little bit. Although I do digital stuff. Like when I do murals, I really love working large scale, with paint and spray cans and paint sprayers and all that stuff. I really love that aspect of it. Um, I wish I could get into more sculptural stuff. I have like an 8 foot tall grizzly bear made out of wood in my parents' backyard, which was an awesome project to do.
Nice.
But you need a lot more space and a lot more equipment in order to do some of these things, and it's a lot more costly to get into it. So I find some of those limitations are kind of the barrier for entry for me getting into
Hmm.
some of that. Although I'm not opposed to it. I love every medium. Like
Yeah.
art in general, creating is the best. Like I just finished my friend's music video, the first time I got to direct and edit a music video. So that was a lot of fun. With the film school background, I love filming, I love editing, I love that sort of stuff. I love acting. I really love, the medium of paint and brush with oil and acrylic. I kind of, I kind of abandoned watercolor. Last time I did watercolor was like for an art show, and like the night before, I was like, oh, I'm gonna finish this piece. It was a beautiful portrait of a woman, and right at the end, I kind of got this big splatter of black ink right on her face, and I got so mad. It was ruined. I just ripped it up, and I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing watercolor ever again. I'm going to stick to a medium that's a little bit more forgiving, because I make a lot of mistakes. And yeah, I love sculpture, like working with like clay and stone. Gosh, like paper mache, even like
Yeah.
any sort of medium that I can express myself with, and
Yeah.
find as like an interesting challenge is the way I like to do things.
Nice. Are you specifically against digital, or it's just kind of you never really chose to go down that path?
You know what I find? That's I have an iPad, and I do a lot of mural mock-ups and stuff like that digitally as a graphic designer, by trade. Uh, I do a lot of digital stuff. I just really love the physical element of life. I mean, we're
Yeah.
going deeper and deeper into this digital world, and to run away from it is like, I'm trying to have a little bit of mix of both.
Hmm.
I've definitely played around with like MetaQuest and like, the VR painting in the VR world, which I think
Yeah.
is a lot of fun.
I see a lot of
um
muralists doing that these days, where they'll like kind of project their image onto like a wall to help them like outline it and stuff.
yeah,
It's very cool.
it is really cool. And it's actually the barrier for entry is becoming less and less, because of those sorts of things. And I'm sure at some point I'll get my own, and do it, because in a lot of ways I'm like, everyone loves the romantic traditionalist ways of doing things, but we do live in a capitalistic society, and time is money. And if you can do something a little bit more quick and efficient, then by all
Right.
means go for it. So, a lot of people call it cheating and all of those other things, but every art, like projection has been around, like Vermeer mastered like projection. So it's
Yeah.
like, and he's a master. So
Yeah. Yeah.
was he cheating? Is he a cheating master? Sure. But does anyone care? No.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's really about the message that you're trying to say in the end product anyways. A to B and how you get there is really just more of a personal preference. But in the realm of digital, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I should jump on the bandwagon. Like I look at even a lot of the people that you've done podcasts with, and people who are actually making good money in art, are doing it working for video game companies. Like that's a
Yeah.
huge, you know, revenue stream and creative outlet, is to do 3D animation and just digital art and character design for video game companies and movies and CGI. And like those are incredible artists doing those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Um, Part of me feels like I'm shooting myself in the foot by not getting into them.
I don't know.
Uh,
I
I
don't know if I'd agree with that sentiment personally. Like, I am very much of the opinion that artists are much better off like investing the time and effort into like having a strong personal brand and selling directly to their clients more so than working for a studio. I think a lot of the studios like there's this misconception that like since movies and video games have such huge budgets that like obviously everyone's like getting paid huge amounts, and that's like it's simply not true for the kind of artists who are doing a lot of the work, which is unfortunate. So I personally I feel very strongly that like if you already have a strong brand like yourself, like to lean to lean into that more, and maybe that means utilizing tools. This is one guy, amazing artist. He calls himself Eighth Project on Instagram, and he does this. What does he call it? Uh, uh, there's a name for it. I'm totally drawing a blank. It has like a funny name to it. It's like superism, something like that, where it's like very abstract, like just like shapes. Um and he does it just Pokemon. Like not just Pokemon, it's other like pop culture things. And so he started like a series of making Pokemon in this style. And it's super cool stuff. And like he's just like I discovered him at like 30,000 followers a couple months ago, and now he's up to like 155, I think. And like he's had this explosion of growth because like he's kind of like again like going back to the whole like branding thing, like if you kind of have your thing that you're known for, it makes it a lot easier. Like you're saying, it's easier to sell one thing to a million people than a million things to one person. And so he's like really kind of like tapped into that. And his work is incredible. So like he's doing it all digitally, but he sells the prints. And, so it, and since he has that following and people love his work, it allows for you to like really monetize your work and not be beholden, like you were saying before about being your own boss. Like you can be your own boss and sell directly to people who love your work because it's yours, which I think is like that's like my again like a kind of my it's a little bit of like a mission I kind of put myself on is like trying to get this message out there to more artists, because I think there is this misconception where people think like, oh yeah, like to work in CGI and movies and character design, like there is something to that. I'm not taking that away, but I think it's a little bit over glorified, and with the internet, like we have the ability to not have to do that anymore. You can just make what you love to make and make a living just off that.
For sure. Well, being an artist, your own artist, working for yourself is a very unstable profession. So I find if you can do art and then bring that stability into it by working for a company, that's in a lot of ways it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
However, grass is greener. It's always a grass is
Right.
greener because
Right.
I know the artists who do have those jobs and they're like, oh man, I wish I could have a little bit more freedom of doing what you do. And then, but it's like it comes with it's always the grass is greener. It comes with the
Yeah.
caveat of, yeah, I can sit down in my basement and paint for 3 months straight and not make a single dollar, but
Right.
you get
Right.
paid every 2 weeks.
Right. Right. No, for sure. That's true. That's very true. Have you ever considered digital sculpting? Because you
Yeah, you
mentioned
know what?
sculpture.
You know what? I've thought about doing that a little bit more. Like I for me as an artist, I think one of the things that I love about any other pop culture that really takes off is their world building.
Hmm.
I find like even like you talk about anything like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, like Pokemon, even like the worlds that they build are so exciting, and which is why they're so big and why so many people do like fan art of them and like and do that sort of stuff. And as an artist, as one guy, I would really love to get more in depth into the world that I'm building with some of these monsters
Mm.
and these creations that I'm doing. And I thought I had the idea yesterday because I want to do a little bit more sculpture, but to do it in a digital world where then people can actually go into the world that I'm
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. That'd be really cool. Like super immersive kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just, for me, it's just that what resists persists, and there's a part of me that's resisting that, and it's that little thing in me that's
Yeah.
persisting that eventually I'll be like, yeah, F it, let's go
Yeah.
for it. Let's buy the meta quest, let's build this whole world. I'll lock myself in my house for 3 months and I'll build this crazy world and people can come and be a part of it and enjoy the monsters that I'm painting and see them up close in real life or real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But like in a little bit more of an immersive experience than just a classic painting on a wall.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like the barrier to entry is pretty low now. Like there's a like on the iPad there's an app called Nomad, which is like I think $10 or $20. It's like a one time you pay once. And it's a digital sculpting app. And it's great. It's really solid, very like user friendly, very easy to learn. And there's obviously ZBrush, but that's like a little bit more like a little bit of a higher bar to entry. Um but yeah, it's great. Like that's my world. This is more of the digital sculpting world. So that's like I'm a big advocate of it. Yeah,
Heck yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I've got to play with it a little bit, and it is a lot of fun. Like, it is a cool world to get lost in for sure.
yeah.
I guess I'm more just married to the real world.
Yeah, and listen, I can't say I blame you. Like for me, I love the I one thing that I've like find that I resist, like I was saying before, it's kind of like the whole like VFX thing is it's sort of that for that same reason. Like I do enjoy having I like to sculpt in the digital world, but then I like to 3D print to like kind of bring it to the real world because like
Yeah,
I love to have the actual physical product. Like for me, my favorite thing is like theme park design. Like I love the immersion that you get and like being in that world, like you're talking about. Like that is the most exciting and most enjoyable and like experiential entertainment, as they call it. That's to me is the most exciting kind of place to be. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, definitely. So then okay, so now back to the third point, and this one is shifting gears a little bit. And you mentioned it here, and you kind of on your website you talk about it, and you're kind of open, and you share the impact of your cancer diagnosis on your artistic career and your artistic path, I should say. Can you kind of talk about like that has impacted your approach to creativity and your approach to making art?
Yeah, for sure. So like just to catch you up to speed on that a little bit of that journey in high school, I found out I had a lump on my testicle, and so I went to go get that checked out, and it turned out to be a cancerous tumor that had to get removed, and it was just a fairly simple surgery, and then I was back to living normal life. And a little over a year after that, the cancer had come back, but it was on the lymph nodes on my stomach, so non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh wow.
And then I had to go through radiation for that. And then a year after that, it had come back on the lymph nodes between my lungs. And I had to do 4 months of chemo for that, which really kicked my ass. That was a really hard one. Like radiation I could deal with. Like that one was fine for the most part in comparison. But the chemotherapy, I got like every symptom in the pamphlet that they
Oh
give you. They're
wow.
like, these are all the 25 symptoms you could get. And I got all of them and then some. And
Wow.
it was a horrible experience. I really don't recommend it. The only silver lining to it was the experience of your hair falling out was novel and interesting. So like but after it was done, it was like kind of depressing. But when it grew back, my hair grew back super curly, which is kind of cool because I got to now experience myself with like a super curly, like I had a fro.
Oh
And
wow.
that was really cool for a while, and then it ended up just straightening out. But that's kind of the only silver lining of the whole thing. But where how it really impacted my artwork in is is when you're 18 and you get hit with the cancer thing, it kind of puts a little bit of a shock to your system because at 18 you're invincible. Got the whole world in front of you. You just graduated high school. Uh, you know, life is really gonna take off here as an adult, and it really made me think about how fragile life is at the same time as it isn't, but it is. And I thought a lot about what do I want to do with my life, and how do I want to spend my time. If that time, if I get a full life, great, but if that time gets cut in half or even less, then how do I want to spend the rest of my time on this earth? And I thought I want to do stuff that's creative. Like I want to be creating. And that's where, I really wanted to go to film school and be an actor and create and do all of those things. And then that kind of barrier there then led me to doing art because I actually got to create whenever I wanted, however I wanted. And I really like it was really just like you got to do whatever you want to do and with your life. And if you do it well enough, then maybe you can make a career out of it. I just wanted to do it, even if it wasn't a job or anything. I just wanted to do it for me. And that's always kind of been something that I've reminded myself, like, if this is all it ever is, am I going to be okay with that? And every step of the way, that has been a yes. If it was, painting once or twice a week, and having a full-time job, then yes, I still want to do that. And now that it's a full-time thing, and yes, I still want to keep doing it, because at the end of the day, we all die. Nobody gets out of here alive, and I want to spend the time that I have doing something that I want. And kind of a bonus of that is I get to leave some sort of a creative legacy behind after I'm done. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of a bit of that inherent drive of, I want to create a bunch of things to fill my time with the things that I love to do, and leave a legacy behind for to hopefully inspire somebody else.
Yeah. So what is that legacy that you kind of hope to leave behind?
Uh, I think it's a little bit of, do whatever kind of makes you happy,
Hmm.
of a legacy. Like, don't overthink it. Don't take life too seriously. If you're feeling the ping to go do something, like, go do it. I think a lot of people, when they want to do something, they think about all the tertiary things. Like, I want to do this so I can make money. Well, money's great because it drives our world. Uh, but the thing about money is, it's the bonus. Like, it shouldn't be the main thing. And I think people focus a lot on, the secondary or tertiary uh give backs of the thing, instead of focusing on, like, the main thing. And for me, one, it's like being in control, being creative, and doing, whatever, wherever my mind goes, and just saying yes. And then as a byproduct of me following the thing that lights me up and gets me very passionate, is the money, is, some of the other benefits, but they're not the main thing. And you really, like, I mean, whatever Steve Jobs said, you really got to love what you do, because a lot of the times it's not sunshines and rainbows, and they're going to have a lot of dark periods. But because you love it and you're so invested in it so deeply, it'll carry you through. But if you don't, and you're just there for the money, you're more of like a fair weather fan, where as soon as that dark cloud comes, you jump ship. And the only failing in any sort of creative pursuit is the quitting. Like, you can do it your whole life and never make any money, like Van Gogh. But Van Gogh was a success by every means, because it didn't matter if he made money on it or not. He just did it either way. The bonus is the money, but he never saw that. But if he gave up because nobody bought his painting, then he's a quitter, and he failed. Yeah, the only failure is actually quitting, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't know if there's like a clear answer to this question, but like, what is it about creativity? Like, it's interesting to me that, like, when you're faced with this kind of challenges, like, is kind of an understatement. Um, with this life altering experience, like, the first place your mind went is like, I want to be more creative. Like, why do you think that is? Like, what do you think? And I think it's kind of an innate human experience to, like, be creative. And I'm curious just to hear, like, your insights, because just since you brought it up, like, what do you think it is about creativity that is so inherent to, like, who we are as people?
Well, I think what makes humans special is our, like, ability to, like, abstract think, and, like, taking, like, maybe kind of the juxtaposition of two separate ideas, and then, like, meshing them together, and then creating something new about it. I think it's that way that we think about things abstractly, and want to kind of almost like problem solve in a way. I think is like the key to that kind of success. And it doesn't need to necessarily be creative in artistic pursuits, but like problem solving, of saying, like, even people who are like, oh, um, my razor keeps cutting me. How do we redesign a razor to make it so you get cut less, and then the shave is closer? Like, I think that kind of level of problem solving is and refinement is such a human thing. But I don't know, creativity in a level just lights up the soul.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't really have an answer. I
That's
just know how it.
I
I
I
just know
prefaced it
how it
like,
feels, and it feels
yeah,
great.
yeah,
So I think I'm a little less concerned with the why, and just grateful for that it does.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
No,
want to
that's
think about it too much.
yeah. And that's why I prefaced it with like it's a hard question. Like I don't think there's a really an answer to it, but like it's I find that so fascinating. That like again, when you were kind of faced with that experience, like the first place you went is creativity, and like there's something about that that really kind of speaks to the human experience. That like that's in a lot of ways like that's what we're here for. I think is like to create and whatever like you're saying, kind of whether that's art, in the kind of pure sense, or whether that's just redesigning the razor to make it more effective. Like but like everyone always talks about like leave the world a better place than you found it. All these things like and that doing that is by creating, right? So like you're leaving when you leave the world a little bit more whole than how you came into it, and like you do that through creativity,
For
whether
sure.
that's obviously creative or less obvious, that's not even the point, like it all kind of comes from that same place, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna change my answer here a little bit because, like, the more I'm thinking about it a little bit more now, and like when it comes to doing art, like some art, like art is like both meaningless and priceless at the same time. Like it doesn't it saves lives, but it doesn't do anything for like our survival as a species.
Right,
And like I
right.
I think that duality in there is kind of the beauty of it, that we're doing it, that creation, despite how it affects our lives, or like despite survival, because it doesn't impact our survival at all, is like the defiance of like nature and God and all of those things. And to create is inherently like some level of a godly act. And so as a human, to create is like to step into like the role of a god. And I think as humans we really love to worship deities, and a level of creation gets to almost like touch on that deity in the way that we can as humans,
Yeah,
and to kind of channel that bit of creation. um yeah, and I think, and in but why, yeah, I guess that's my answer, is why, is because it makes us feel like gods.
yeah. No, it's I love what you said there with the duality. I'm gonna like really think about that one for a while, because it's totally like a total aside, but like just since you mentioned it, like I think duality is like kind of a recurring um theme throughout everything. Like everything exists in dualities and like in between the dualities, right? Like the way I always think about it is like it's like magnets, right? You have like a positive and a negative, right, pole, and then alone, neither one kind of does anything, right? It's like just a piece of metal, but you bring them close to each other and you create a magnetic field. So it's like these two opposites that their interaction with one another creates this third thing that is greater than the sum of their parts. And like I think, and
Totally.
that you see that throughout everything. It permeates kind of everything that exists, and like it's the way that you mentioned that with art. Like I never thought of it that way, and like that, like it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. So I'm gonna like really have to think that one through.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, like any sort of, I guess, like artistic thing, where, I mean, the only failure is not doing it right. Like, because like you look at any sort of art, whether it's like surrealism or like even abstract art, conceptual art, whether it's good or not is kind of
Not
the
the point.
secondary thing, is not the point. The point is that the art was created and somebody put the energy and the effort into it. That in and of itself, that act of creation, that godly act, whatever you want to call it, and despite it not really serving humanity in a lot of ways, as far as our survival is concerned, and kind of going against the grain of, you know, evolution, because it doesn't really participate in evolution very much, is super fascinating to me. And I really think like with when you again, it's kind of like the moving target again. If you pin it down, you've lost the point, because it's always a moving target, and it's always ever changing and evolving. And I think, yeah, to almost like define it or to pin it down, which is what humans love to do, is
Yeah.
to define things and put it in a box. again, art and is essentially the exception to every rule where the second you put it in a box, it's not art anymore.
Yeah.
So the fact that it is elusive is the whole point.
Yeah. No, I have this thing like this saying that because you just again like you talk about how like art is kind of like divine in nature, and so like godliness by definition is infinite, right? That's kind of like the idea. And so like I always say that infinity is a direction, not a destination. It's that same point where it's like as soon as you think you got there, like it's just it keeps going away from you. You know, like it's because it's
Totally.
not the point is not to get there. The point is to constantly be moving in that direction. And like this, yeah, it's yeah, wow. That's
Yeah, you
really,
know
really
what?
well said.
Usually, every time I do some sort of show or something where I release a series of artwork, it's always followed by some level of depression afterwards. Because in my mind, like I'm only human, I do think, even though I know it's like a false narrative, is that, oh, the series is done. I'm done. And then when I feel like I've done something is when I fall into this like depression
Yeah,
because I'm like, oh right, it's never done. There is no done. It's like this
yeah,
thing, this maybe this small little pocket is finished and it's not, now time to move on to the next one. And so it's like almost like mourning a loss that the
mm,
thing is over and now it's like on to the next chapter, the next pursuit, the next body of work, whatever it is. But then it's always kind of coming back to going like, oh yeah, this is just the constant process. It's kind
yeah,
of like when people say, oh, how do you, some people don't sell their art because they're so emotionally attached to it. And it's like, well, how do you sell your art? Like when I paint something, I just love it so much. I don't want to sell it. And I agree. I don't want to sell my art too. Like I like it as well, but it's just it's part of that ever evolving process that just needs to
yeah,
kind of take place all the time.
yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's you know, the never ending story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to ask you because you talk a lot about the importance of like sharing your art and and also like taking opportunities, saying yes to things. So, what sort of advice would you give to artists, people who are kind of just starting out and kind of finding their place? Like, how does one go about finding those opportunities to kind of uh, achieve those things in the art world?
For sure. Okay, well, I guess like to start, this kind of goes back to your previous question of like what the message is. And like as an artist, my message is I really do want I'm not really one to preach a message, but I really love to be a source of inspiration of like the way I do things or how I live my life. So that other artists can say like, oh, like look at Josh, he's doing murals and he's painting and he's kind of saying yes to everything and he's trying his hand at stuff and he's not afraid to suck and he's not afraid to fail. He's just trying it all out and he's just a human mucking through the world and he's doing it as beautifully gracefully as he can, uh as any human can, which is like full of faults and being okay with that. And I think that is kind of the message is I just want to serve as that sounding board for any other creative out there, as like a bit of a source of inspiration to keep plugging along, and that it is a marathon and not a sprint, and it is a lifelong pursuit that is never over. Um, but in terms of you know helping another generation of artists kind of come into their own, I think experimentation is a big part of being an artist, of trying new things. It's easy to get into a comfort zone. And I think you want to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and to
Mm,
putting yourself into uncomfortable positions because that is where real growth takes place. So, you know, before I ever did a mural, I had to do a mural. So you have to say yes to things that are just outside of your skill set, just outside of your ability, and saying yes to anything and everything is the way in which you find the things that you truly love. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be things that you don't like. Like there's some things about painting that I don't like. There's some things about sculpting that I don't like. But there's some things about being a doctor or a lawyer or like an accountant that people don't like too. But there are things that you do like. And so it's not about, abandoning something because one part of the process is too hard or whatever. You're always going to find something you don't like. It's just about finding, you know, and if you don't try it all out, you'll never find out what you'll do like and what you don't like. So that's like a really big part of the vetting process. We live in a world where the barrier for entry for a lot of things, you don't need to go and get a degree or a doctorate in order to do the job. You can just pick up a pencil and a piece of paper and start doing your job. Um, a lot of the tools that we have today are fairly accessible for anybody, like phones and cameras and software is fairly accessible for the individual to just start an experiment and just try things out. And you gotta, like, with art, it's a lot about your failure rate. You really gotta fail consistently, and like, you gotta keep your failure rate up, because if you're not failing a lot, then you're not working enough.
Mm.
You're not working enough.
You're not trying
Because a
enough
lot of,
new things.
yeah, exactly. A lot of art
Yeah.
is failed attempts at drawing a face or a hand or a nose or something like that. And you just got to keep doing it, because if you don't fail, you'll never actually succeed. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with their drawings looking like shit for a long time. But that's just part of the process. You just got to be okay with your art looking like shit for a while.
Yeah.
And before you can actually get to a part that you impress yourself with. And that is like, that's the little thing you cling on to, like, oh man, that hand actually looked pretty good, just enough to inspire you again to draw one more hand, and it's just like these very incremental, tiny little improvements over a long period of time, is the trick of it all. And finding opportunities. I mean, we live in a digital age. There's opportunities on Instagram and Facebook and Indeed, and you could just type it into Google and find a million opportunities. There's so many websites out there. The only caveat to all of it is that they're so impersonal, and we are people of connection. We love
Yeah.
connection. So to go through the internet is such an impersonal aspect of this world that we've gotten ourselves in, which is like so many opportunities, but like those opportunities like don't really feel deeply, I don't know, satisfying in a lot of ways. So
Mm.
like do not abandon the tried and true method of like just showing up at a coffee shop and being like, hey, I see you got some blank walls, or you got some other artist art on the walls. Can I jump in next? That's how I started. I printed off a portfolio and I went to every restaurant in the city, and I just walked in to try to talk to whoever was in charge and see if I could get my art hung up somewhere. And, 99% of the time I heard a no. But I always think, if you're only maybe 20 no's away from the first yes, it's pretty damn exciting to go get the first few no's out of the way, because then
Yeah.
the yes is coming sooner. So you want
Yeah.
to get more no's as fast as you can so you can get that yes. And it is a lot of rejection. Like, it's like 90 some percent rejection. January and February, all I did was write for grants and proposals and stuff, and I got rejected from every single one. Everyone. I haven't heard one yes. And that just is what it is. There was a time in my life where I got like 5 yeses in a row, and I was like, hell yeah! Now I'm like overcommitted to all of these things, but it was awesome. And now I'm just hearing a plethora of no's, and that's just,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Again, it's keeping your failure rate up, because y'all never get the yes if I don't get 20 no's first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think for anybody, it's just about that persistence, and it's a war of attrition. The only real artists are the ones who just don't give up. The only failure is quitting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to ask on that point, um, like how do you know when to abandon a path? Like, if you're kind of going down, because not every path you go down is going to be the right one. So how do you kind of know when to abandon a path you're trying to pursue versus pushing through until you do kind of find that yes?
I think that is a deeply personal question that
Mm.
only the individual can answer. Um, because it's a feeling. It's not necessarily like a metric or like a data point or something. There's a feeling in there that says, like, this is not worth pursuing anymore. Now, there's like, for me, there's the difference between, because like a lot of art is a lot of failure. So I guess it's about that internal message of like, what are you trying to do? And asking yourself the question, if this is all it ever is are you going to be okay with that? And for some of the art that I make, even though I know it's not going to sell or make me any money, I make it anyways because it's something that drives me and lights me up. It fuels my fire. Is it necessarily net positive? There's always a way of looking at it where, oh yeah, this thing that I'm doing that is kind of a wasted effort. I'm going to drive a skill from it, or I'm going to learn about color theory a little bit more, or form or something. There's always some sort of silver lining that pushes me further down the track. And that's really it is. It's just whatever these like little micro movements forward are is the thing to be focusing on, because it's not always going to be forward momentum. Sometimes it's going to be backwards momentum. I'm going through a big shift in my career right now of a ton of backwards momentum, which really, really sucks. But I know what I'm doing is not, it's not for the faint of heart, but I know what I'm doing is totally worthwhile and worth the pursuit. Because it will pay off at some point. And if it doesn't, I'll learn a ton from it. But yeah, I think it's a very personal question. I think you have to be really honest with yourself. And that one's sometimes really hard. Like everybody, looking for external gratification on some of these things is great. When your friends are saying like, "Hey, this art is awesome. What you're doing is awesome," and you can say, "Yeah, that's awesome. I'll keep doing it." But your friends and family and stuff, like they're really nice. They're really polite. They want to inspire you. They want to encourage you. Nobody wants to tell you what you're doing is shitty, and probably nobody ever will, because they just want you to be happy and be satisfied with whatever you're doing and keep encouraging you. So it really takes you to have that really honest look at yourself and say like, is this something that I can push through? Is this something that I find worthwhile, or it adds value to my life in some shape or form? That is the primary, that it fuels my fire. But if I'm just doing this because like, oh, I'm an artist because I want to make a ton of money or something, or I want all this external validation because I want everybody to tell me that my art is good. So that means I'm good, and I love validation, external validation, because it makes me feel accepted by my society. Then maybe that's not the North Star that you should be focusing on. And if that is the North Star, I think you need to look a little bit deeper and to figure it out. Because, I was in an acting class in Vancouver, and one of my teachers asked me that question of like, why do you want to be an actor? And, very honestly and bluntly, I said, I really want people to love me and feel accepted by what I'm doing. And that was the kiss of death for me, because I love acting. It's a lot of fun. Like I really enjoy the freedom of expressing myself in those ways. But when I am acting for somebody else's script, somebody else's narrative, then I don't necessarily feel that same level of freedom anymore. That's where I love improv, because I'm a little bit more in control of where the story goes instead of being in total surrender to somebody else's story. And I really realized that my why was not a why that was going to carry me through the dark parts, the lows, and like to get me through to the other side. But with painting and stuff like that and being in control, it wasn't about being liked and loved by people or accepted. It was about this like need for being in control and for creating something that I really enjoyed, that made my life feel worthwhile. And so those are the honest conversations you have to have with
Yeah,
yourself. And there's not really a way around it. This is why it's such a personal question. Because you,
yeah,
you really got to look at yourself in the mirror.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's kind of the best art comes from people who have the ability to do that, and then they kind of, and that's like art is kind of a piece of yourself. It's like a reflection, and and the more honest you can be with yourself and through your art, like the more it speaks to other people, because other people kind of can feel it in seeing what you're creating. I'm curious to ask you, and I hope you don't mind me asking. And if you don't want to share, obviously feel free not to. But you mentioned that you feel like you're taking steps backwards, and you hope that it pays off. Like what's kind of going on that, like, because from externally, like looking at you, like it seems like you're doing pretty well. Like, again, I found you through social media, so it's like,
Yeah.
through that lens, it's like this guy seems like he's really kind of on the right path. So I'm kind of curious, like what do you feel that's not working, that's not that's taking steps back?
That, oh man, you're asking for some real male vulnerability here. And as somebody who is an advocate for those sorts of things, I will step into it, even though it makes me feel super uncomfortable, because I do believe somebody out there is probably going through this as well and also needs to hear it. And yeah, social media is a ton of smoke and mirrors. Uh, like, yeah, 92,000 followers. My life isn't that much different from when I had 5,000, in all honesty. It's nice. I've been selling a few more prints and originals to other parts outside of the city and the country, which is awesome. It's definitely helping pay the bills a little bit more, because being an artist is not for the faint of heart. Um, and but it's not as amazing as I thought it was going to be. And also, I'm not the greatest at taking this sort of stuff and monetizing it. Like, I love the business aspect, and I'm trying to get better at it all the time, and figuring out ways to monetize it a little bit more, so I can just keep creating and pursuing like this thing that really gives me joy. And that's the main thing, is like I'm monetizing it so I can keep doing the thing that I love to do.
Right.
There's a part of me wishes that I didn't have to do that and I could just do it all the time, but I love doing it so much that I got to figure out a way of monetizing it even more, so I can keep affording to do the thing that I love. Um, but yeah, in terms of yeah, taking a step backwards, in the last few months, I ended up losing my studio space. So, oh, I'm gonna air some tea here. So I had a studio space on Calgary Trail, and it housed my 6,000 paintings. And the real part of the reason why I bought that many paintings is because I had enough space to house it. But uh, long story short here, I got evicted from that space. There was just a big communication error between uh, the lady I was subleasing from and the landlord and the tattoo shop that was, on the third floor above me. And, long story short, the landlord ended up leasing my space out to the tattoo shop. And anyways, I ended up kind of getting kicked out of that space. So I had to sell my 6,000 paintings, which I took a loss for, but because I couldn't afford to take them with me. I moved into my my girlfriend at the time, moved into the basement there, created a little home studio, and temporarily, until I found a new studio or a new space. And then in the last couple months there, we ended up breaking up, and so I moved out of our house together, and now I moved back in with my parents, and I'm in the basement back again, like I was when I was 18 years old. And just, in all honesty, I'm just feeling so shitty about myself, because I didn't think this is what my life would be looking like at this stage. But then again, now I have 90,000 followers. So the duality of these two things happening right now is honestly quite depressing. I've been in a very dark space for the last couple months, despite social media saying kind of the opposite, because nobody's going to post about the
Right.
darkness of their life happening all the time on social media. But as a person who wants to just be honest and authentic, yeah, I lost my studio. My grandpa died too. My dad's brother, my uncle, died 3 months ago. I lost my studio space, lost my girlfriend,
Wow.
moved back with my parents. It's been quite a lot of change, a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
It had, I mean, I'm not so broke that I can't move out. It's just, there's uh, it's nice to be at home with family during some
Yeah,
of these
definitely.
things, and to be kind of close and kind of reconnect, because at the same point, like, that's what life's all about, is human connection. And so it's nice to actually uh, be able to go and hang out with my dad and golf and go to the gym with him and stuff like that,
Yeah.
while we kind of go through our grieving processes together. But yeah, it's been hard. It's been really hard. um, yeah, I'm at the point where friends reach out. I don't even reply to them because I'm just feeling so shitty. But I'm trying. I'm trying as hard as I can, and
Yeah,
it is what it is. Life is tough sometimes,
yeah,
and it's not always sunshines and rainbows. And I'm in the down part. At some point, we'll go through the up part. And it's just kind of, again, it's about riding that wave. It's the war of attrition. It's never giving up, and it's continuing to push on, but it's not easy.
yeah. First of all, I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability because, like, I didn't know what I was expecting when I asked the question, and
Yeah,
so I really do appreciate you kind of like sharing all that because like we just met. It's not like we've known each other for a long time. So the fact that you kind of felt the ability to express that on this platform, like, really, it means a lot to me, and so I do appreciate you sharing that. And obviously, like, it's very challenging, and like, it's when you're in those tough times, it's very easy to kind of allow that darkness to like consume you and to feel and to kind of remember the high points, like, and it, there's all the classic, like, oh, it'll get better and all these things. So it's like, okay, like, very nice. You could say all these things, but it doesn't really help feel it. Um,
totally.
yeah. So that's the first thing. And then, so to try and kind of look to the positive, what are like some things that, like, you kind of are like, I know I saw you mentioned online that you're moving to Vienna. Is that it? You have like a
I'm doing I got an art residency in France, which
in
I'm doing in the
France.
fall. Yeah, which is it's a pretty awesome experience. I'm really looking forward to it because it'll just be a chateau with 20 other artists in France doing art for 3 weeks, and I'm gonna go out a little early to explore Paris a little bit, and then I'm hoping I'm hoping to make some friends and see where life takes me after the
Yeah,
residency's over. I've never been to Europe before, so I would love to explore a little bit more in the area. I don't really know where to go yet. I mean, there's infinite options.
yeah,
It's almost like I get decision fatigue of figuring out where I'm going to go. So I'm just going to kind of let the residency unfold how it should, and go wherever the ping pulls me.
yeah, yeah. And hopefully
Yeah.
that'll kind of lead you to, you know, to new experiences and to more positive experiences, that, like, you can and ultimately grow from, because, like you said throughout, like, that's kind of the purpose that we're all here for, is to grow and to continue to evolve and explore and try new things and push ourselves. That's kind of what we're all here to do, I think. So I wish you a lot of luck with that, because that sounds really exciting. I'm really like excited for you, because I saw that and I was like, that's really, just it just sounds awesome.
It's yeah, you know what it is? It is a bucket list thing for me. As an artist, you don't make a ton of money. So if I can afford to use art as a way of also traveling and seeing the world, and sharing that experience with everybody, then that's exactly what I want to do. Like, I really love doing art residencies and connecting with other people from different cultures and just also other like-minded people to share ideas and create with. And I just find there's so much beauty in that, that fills my soul, and I would love to
Yeah,
keep doing more residencies and more exploration, more collaborations with other artists and stuff like that. Art is a very solitary pursuit when you're doing stuff like this,
yeah,
and I sometimes that really wears on the soul a little bit. I really love to connect and collaborate with other people. So hopefully in that process, I can kind of satiate and scratch that itch.
yeah, yeah, definitely. One last question, and then we could wrap things up. And that is a question that I pose to a lot of people, and you kind of touched upon it a lot already, but I want to kind of just spell it out. And that is, how do you define success?
Oh. Oh gosh, that's another one that's always moving. Uh, it's another one that's always moving because, the way I defined success a couple years ago is probably not the way I define success today. And and it is always changing. Like, like 2 months ago, success to me looked like selling out most of my art at an art fair. And then I went to Toronto and I sold out most of all of my art at Artist Project Toronto. I came home with two paintings, which was an incredible experience. And to me, that is what success looks like. However, there was like an element of it because of where I'm at right now in my life that still felt hollow. I think to me, success in this moment looks like being excited to wake up in the morning. I think that's what success to me is waking up in the morning and feeling good about however the day is going to unfold,
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if it's art or whatever job it is, but you kind of want to be able to look forward to the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very well said. And like a lot of things you said today is very well said. Yeah, very,
Thank you.
very insightful. And I really appreciate your time. And this is tremendous conversation. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and for sharing everything that you shared, because it was really, there's a lot. And I really appreciate it, because it was really, I know for myself that I really enjoyed talking to you. So thank you so much. Where can everybody find you online? Socials, website, all the good stuff.
My name is Josh Harnack. You can just type in Google the name, but my Instagram is Harnack Art, spelled like it sounds, Harnack. And my website is harnack.ca, Facebook, Harnack Art, TikTok, Harnack Art. Those are the main ways that you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook. TikTok is a little bit of an afterthought for me sometimes, but I know again that's where everybody's going these days, so I'm trying to be a little bit more on top of it. But yeah, I really appreciate this conversation too. Thank you for asking me. I just love talking to some like-minded people, and
Yeah.
I really love what you do. And thank you for giving me a bit of a platform. And yeah, it's uh, it's
Yeah.
a hard work out here for us artists. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much again for your time. I really thank you a lot.
Yeah, all right. Well, take care. I'm hoping this isn't the last time we get a chat.
Definitely.
Okay.